So sometimes when you sit, too much, then during break, as you warm up your coffee or whatever, do some prostrations. Then, some movement of energy can be distributed. Now, statement 6 in chapter 7. It says the Dharmakaya possesses the qualities and deeds. And so this is continuing, right, from the emphasis that Kyoba Rinpoche places on how, yes, from the emptiness perspective, from that vantage point, we talk about how the state of Buddha is beyond all the dualistic exist, not exist, samsara, nirvana, here, there, self, other, all of that. However, it would be a mistake to think when they say there is no samsara, no nirvana, no good, no bad, no here, no there, no exists or non-exists. It's a mistake to think that in the Buddha state is also non-existent, and that the Buddha qualities are non-existent. It's not that they're non-existent. Of course they exist. But it's the way they exist is not the dualistic exist and not exist, yes and no, here and there, self and other, that we habitually operate under. So here again he says, the Dharmakaya is not just a mere absence, meaning the Dharmakaya is not a state where it's the mere absence of, like, say, self. Yeah, if it is just the mere absence of self, which is the nature of all things, right? All things, all persons, all phenomena lack self. Your mind, this mind lacks self in the same way that this phone lacks self, in the same way that this prayer wheel lacks self, in the same way that this book lacks self. Equally, they are empty of self, of course. Yeah. But Kyoba Rinpoche wants to say, or points out, that it cannot be that the Dharmakaya lacks self, and that's it. If that's it, then why even strive to attain Buddhahood? Are you saying that Buddhahood is no different from prayer wheel, table, phone? Because they equally lack self. They are equally empty. So how can Dharmakaya just be emptiness? It says, no, Dharmakaya possesses the qualities and the deeds, meaning the activities. And Dharmakaya has Buddha qualities and Dharmakaya has Buddha activities. In fact, if you ask like those who are more kind of like for example, Gelugpa tradition. They will say, oh yes, Dharmakaya is just, it's basically emptiness. It's an absence. It's a mere absence. Without further anything that you can say about it. All you can say is it's an absence. Absence of what? Absence of afflictive emotions, absence of suffering, absence of all the things that we cannot handle and don't like, and they say it's absent of all of that because it's absent of self. And Khyalpa Rinpoche say, yes, of course, but it's not just a mere absence. Mere absence is just one aspect of what Dharmakaya is. Dharmakaya also has qualities and deeds. And that is when I think I would say, I think majority of Gelugpas will say, no. And they will say that qualities and activities appear when a sentient being walks into the room. You remember that part? And they say only when a sentient being walks into a room, because those sentient beings need these qualities and activities to guide them out of samsara. Therefore, the qualities and the activities temporarily appear for them. But from the Buddha's own side, no, nothing. And Khyalpa Rinpoche says, no. Too far. So, okay, now let's look at the counterpoint. The statement was uttered by Khyalpa Rinpoche when I'm sure he heard, maybe again, some of his disciples discussing these things. Because you have to remember during Khyalpa Rinpoche's time, and even now, people were going left and right and up and down, except that people weren't able to get information so easily. If they want to learn from this or that teacher, they don't just turn on Zoom a few times and say, I don't know how to operate it. I give up. People actually have to, cross a few valleys to go learn from another teacher. But they did. They went up valleys, up mountains, down mountains to get to the next valley, We get on Zoom, it's like, oh, it's not working. No. Oh, it's a sign, I should not. It's a sign of my laziness. It's a sign of my lack of commitment. It's not a sign that, oh, I should not. We have it so easy, Our access to Dharma comes so easy. And sometimes we even get upset if other people don't make it easier for us. Give up. Anyway, during Khyalpa Rinpoche's time, people did go visit other teachers, train with other places, and they come and they talk, Especially if there's a newcomer arriving, people are like, oh, where did you come from? Who did you study with? What did they say about this, about that? And so they have these things going on. So you can imagine in that kind of environment. So people claim that since the Dharmakaya is beyond dualistic structures, dualism, then it has exhausted all causes and conditions. Meaning in the Dharmakaya state, from the Dharmakaya perspective, it's just emptiness. It has exhausted all causes and conditions. Khyalpa Rinpoche says, no, the Dharmakaya possesses qualities and deeds. So in a way you can say, in another way of looking at this, it's like he is concerned about the nihilistic tendencies of Buddhist practitioners. Buddhist practitioners, whether during Khyalpa Rinpoche's time or in our modern time, half the way across the world in another physical location, if you're attracted to Buddhism, you probably have certain nihilistic tendencies more than eternalistic tendencies. So Kyoen Rinpoche is concerned about these nihilistic tendencies taking over. So he reminds us, the qualities and the deeds. So I've heard one teacher, I forgot who, I think it was someone who has taught in the West and has great success, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. He says that whereas in Asia, we don't have to, and we don't so quickly or so early talk about Buddha nature and the qualities of Buddha nature and how those qualities are inherent in us. In Asia, we don't talk about that much or that soon. But in the West, they say, sometimes it's very necessary to begin with that. Because in some ways, a combination of, I think, two things. One is a more culturally, there's a long cultural history to this point, which is the point about original sin. That we are all born with sin. So that somehow inside us, there is a rotten nature. So that comes from, right, certain theological Christian background. So that's a cultural, historical reason. So Westerners have that kind of somewhere hiding behind, even if it is not explicit, right? It is hiding somewhere behind there. Yeah. Then the second part of like the problem of like nihilism being stronger in the West has something to do with, I think, the materialistic, and I don't mean materialistic here in like a negative sense. I mean it like in our materially based secular world that many of us are living in, and increasingly this is also the case in Asia. People have turned to a purely materialist explanation for what is real and what is not real. In some ways, it's a reaction to, right, the hold of tradition and old religion, the way in which they have controlled our lives. So now in the West is this materialist secular view. But the materialist secular view is not a single view, by the way, I don't mean it, but this pervasive kind of, very loosely articulated sense does leave us with the feeling and the explicit idea that there is no meaning in this world, no significance in this world. So therefore, you have to make it up yourself and entertain yourself, and then you die. Right? Yeah, we have to make up some meaning because there is no meaning. There's no bigger anything except for what's in front of you. That's it.
Are you talking about what some people think that happiness is?
Or just how, the more secular we have become,
Yeah, how they interpret their happiness.
Yeah, and say that there's no final, any kind of happiness except for what you make of it. That's it. Right? Then you work, you make money, you build a family, and then
you go
die.
for vacations, you have a bigger house and you have a
Yeah.
better car, and that's it.
And that's it, And then when you are dying and you're dead, that's it, Finish. Right? So that, I think a lot of young people, they have lost their old time religion, right? And then there's nothing new to fill that gap except for this materially based understanding of what being alive is about, which is about nothing. We're just like ants. We're just like, the birds. Like accidentally something bad happens. Oh, that's it. Bye-bye. Finish. So it gets very depressing. I mean, it's understandable why people are feeling like this because, right, the old systems of meaning, whether we call it religion, whether we call it ideology, whether we call it philosophy, right, the old systems of meaning have become increasingly irrelevant. So I think the same thing is happening even in Buddhist places, like in Bhutan. I talked to some friends in Thailand. They said increasingly young people just don't believe in all that, right? Okay, fine. You said, okay, all of that, there's a lot of negative things that have happened in the name of religion. So for that matter, it doesn't matter what religion, every religion, I say, when they gain power, then that darker side of that religion comes out. Don't tell me Buddhism don't have this problem. It exactly has the same problem that Islam has, Christianity has, Hinduism has. When religion gain power, this is what happens. So I don't fault, people from saying, I cannot accept this. So then what do we turn to? We turn to what's this modern, quote unquote, modern, kind of secular, materially based understanding of reality. And that system says, so what about this thing called consciousness? They say, oh, consciousness is a byproduct of body, right? They say it's a byproduct of body. Right? The sperm and the ovum is what made consciousness. Stuff gave rise to non-stuff. Now, again, scientifically, no problem. But when that becomes a belief system, then that belief system promises nothing except for be here now, be happy now, and die. That's it. So this nihilism is strong, We, and I might not use the word nihilism, but these nihilistic tendencies are going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. 20 years from now, I'm sure it will become even stronger. Why? Like in the United States, we say people turning to psychologists, therapists, drugs, because everyone is depressed. Why? I think it's related to this. It's these nihilistic tendencies. Then even when they turn to yoga, they turn to certain Buddhist meditations, certain Hindu meditation, they still cannot get out of that materially based. Because they are just taking, or we are just taking, picking and choosing these different modalities to try to fix the absence of meaning in our lives. And because we're so suspicious of religion, right? So we're not willing to accept a system of meaning. We're only willing and able to take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then try to fix this bigger problem of having lost any confidence in any systems of meaning, except for the secular, materially based, which we don't think of it as a system of meaning, but of course it is. We don't think that we're being indoctrinated by that, but of course we are. We think it's neutral, right? I mean, we're like, in a way, brainwashed into thinking this is the neutral. And if there is religion in the past, if there's ideology in the past, if there's spirituality in the past, it's all something imposed on what is the neutral blank state, which we think is the secular, materially based. Surely that is the neutral. But that is not neutral. That is a system of meaning that has arisen in a particular moment in time. So for me especially then to see, Gilbert Rinpoche emphasizing the Dharmakaya possesses qualities and deeds, is especially relevant also in our times. Because we already have these nihilistic tendencies. So we've got to be careful not to misapply Dharma to further feed this nihilism. Questions, comments? I think it's even things like, when parents say, and of course these parents, because when you were young, you were subjected to say, Catholic, upbringing, or, Lutheran or Jewish or even Buddhist, right? Now, because you have suffered through that, you've been traumatized by that, then you say, oh, I'm not going to raise my kids with any religion, meaning any indoctrination, right? You say that, right? But be careful, there is no absence, right? Absence by definition don't exist. Something is always present. So, what are they picking up? They're picking up another system of meaning. You think that no, I did not impose any system of meaning on them. But there's no vacuum, The TV, the internet, that is giving them a system of meaning. Yeah, so for those of you in the next few years that you're making babies, think of that when you're raising them. Don't think, oh, I don't want to impose anything on them. Then you are letting the media, right, impose something on them. There's no blank state. You have to choose what to fill it with. So I think there's a gentle way of choosing on behalf of your kids, which is the gentle way of saying, temporarily right now, I will choose for you what I think is best because I have tested it myself. But always leave that door and say, as he or she begins to develop their own capacity for thinking and reasoning and making choices, leave the door open for them to finally choose. But you cannot say, like, oh, I'm not going to give them anything now because I'm imposing. Then something else will do the imposing for you. So you give them something first. Then you see whether this is what they choose later. Then you surrender. Okay, now we look at something more esoteric. This is the more general point of what the take-home lesson for all these few statements about how the Buddha state is not just empty, There are implications to our life right now, Even if they're talking about the Buddha state and we're very far from the Buddha state, nonetheless, there are implications, right? So now we look at the more specific context of this statement. So then, of course, a lot of technical Buddhist details are going to come up. Okay. In general, cognitive misorientation, which is Sobish's preferred translation for what's normally translated as ignorance, or what I prefer to translate as confusion. Okay? So, avidya. Avidya, actually in Sanskrit, more literally, vidya is knowledge. Right? And the verb there is vid, to know. So, avidya is not knowing. But the Buddha defined not knowing as not simply, even if the word the etymology of the word is literally not knowing, Buddha says it's not just not knowing as in passively not knowing something. It's really more than that. It's really misknowing. That means knowing mistakenly. So knowing the wrong things about nature of reality. Avidya, right? So anyway, in general, confusion at the time of the ground is not other than the awakening of the essential Dharmakaya. Now this is a very whoa. Because normally we say, Dharmakaya and confusion are like two different things. But here it quotes this Manjushri Vikridita Sutra that says, confusion at the time of the ground is awakening, is bodhi. Bodhi itself is confusion. So yes, you will find in Mahayana texts things like this, or in Vajrayana texts, these kinds of statements, right? And what does this mean? Since such a pure nature, the Dharmakaya, exists for all sentient beings. So since all sentient beings are Dharmakaya, I mean, often we say all sentient beings have Dharmakaya, but they've got to be careful and not think that, it's like there's me and this is what I have. So they're separate. So more accurate is to say all sentient beings are Dharmakaya. Yeah. So since such a pure nature, the Dharmakaya, exists for all sentient beings, the systems through which one abandons defects and acquires qualities up to and including the 10th Bodhisattva stage are the same. However, the appearances of body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities after the attainment of Buddhahood are not the same at all. So basically here, Chodra is saying, the ways in which you purify all the defilements and the confusions is basically the same. But what results in terms of the qualities and the activities after you are Buddha, they are not the same. So this is an explanation for why we say medicine Buddha, right? Has these qualities. Oh, we do the practice for healing. Amitabha and his Pure Land has a deep connection to us. So it's easier, they say, for us to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land. Right? So it says, and therefore, there are these differences. So the Exalted One said that at the time when one obtains the ultimate Dharmakaya, from possessing the qualities of separation, arise their qualities of maturation. So this is a phrase that we see a lot. The qualities of separation and the qualities of maturation. The qualities of separation is the sang of Sangye. Sangye is Buddha in Tibetan. Sang is to dissipate, to clear away. So that's the qualities that arise from having cleared away confusion and defilements. Then the qualities of maturation are the Buddha qualities that now arise. So the Buddha said that at the time when one achieves ultimate Dharmakaya, from possessing the qualities of separation, due to having the qualities of separation, then arise the qualities of maturation, which is the Sambhogakaya. What is Sambhogakaya? Sambhogakaya is the arising of those qualities. Then what is Nirmanakaya? Nirmanakaya is those qualities now benefiting others in concrete ways. That's what we call Nirmanakaya. And those are what we call activities. So remember, the statement is Dharmakaya naturally, innately possesses qualities and activities or deeds. He translates in the statement here as deeds, but then in the commentary he translates as activities. Same Tibetan word. Yeah. Regarding the qualities of the Dharmakaya, the Mahayana Upadesha Sutra says, if summarized, there are 64. If further summarized, the Dharmakaya is said to possess 4 qualities. So then some quotes on these qualities. Then top of page 646. Furthermore, since it has been taught in great detail in such scriptures as the Bodhisattva Gochara Sutra, we do not maintain a so-called Dharmakaya as nothing but emptiness. Instead, the Dharmakaya that possesses qualities and deeds is the ultimate refuge. So Maitreya Natha says, meaning Maitreya says, regarding the refuge, there is only the Buddha, because the sage, the Buddha, embodies Dharmakaya. This is in the Uttara Tantra, an important sutra text that teaches about Buddha nature. So here, Dharmakaya naturally possesses the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. Sambhogakaya are the qualities. Nirmanakaya are the qualities in action, the activities, that they're inherently there already. Not something that needs to be created newly. So in the notes, Sobish says, in general, so Dorje Sherab gives us more explanation. It is held that Dharmakaya at the time of sentient beings, which is to say Buddha nature in the ground, exercises a certain pool or bestows a certain blessing. So it's saying that, so this is really interesting. Dorje Sherab says, he elaborates. This really helps clarify Chodra. So you see Chodra, right? It says, hold on, let me see. So Chodra's commentary says, in general, confusion at the time of the ground, meaning ground here meaning when we're still sentient beings, meaning the starting point, ground. So ground, path, and fruit. This is a common triad. Ground, so here means while we are still confused sentient beings. So on the ground level, this confusion, even in the midst of this confusion, there is a more abiding reality, which is the Dharmakaya. And this Dharmakaya, in a way, now Dorje Sherab explains in the notes, this Dharmakaya exercises a certain pool or bestows a certain blessing. This is kind of using like religious expression, which is to say, how is it that we even think, oh, I want to be free from suffering? It says, this is actually the innate Dharmakaya blessing or a certain pool from within you. Even in the midst of so much confusion, defilements, misconceptions, all of that, nobody needs to teach us that desire to be happy. And that desire that we want to be happy, right? To be free from suffering, here it's pointed out, that is the Dharmakaya stirring. Or the Dharmakaya blessing us. And this is felt in the hot hells as a cooling wind, in the cold hells as a warming wind, and in general in the three lower realms as other kinds of mild happiness. Through it, gods and men become weary of samsara and feel an urge for nirvana. This is a very special explanation. So, to me, this also helps us to, and I feel like sometimes, old style religion, including Buddhism, has emphasized too much on how we need to not be attached. So that even when we experience something good, we feel guilty. Even, not just Catholics have this problem, I tell you. Buddhists in Asia too, Some Buddhist teachers, say, this is all suffering, why are you, oh, you like chocolate, you enjoy chocolate, that is suffering, Yes, on the one, because we are so attached to things, yes, we need to be reminded that, this brings more suffering, if you don't know how to relate to chocolate, it brings suffering, this, that, all of that, But here in this explanation, it says, like when you're suffering in the hot hells, burning, sometimes you will feel a cool wind, giving you some relief. And if you're suffering in the cold hell, sometimes a certain warmth you can feel. So it says, in general, right? These kinds of mild happiness that you experience, they are in fact related to Buddha nature. Sometimes religious people are very judgmental. Yes, we see someone, becoming happy because they had a beer, let's say. Then we become very judgmental. We say, oh, this is, not good. Yeah, maybe, becoming addicted and dependent on substances, of course, that brings suffering. But the fact that this person temporarily is experiencing some kind of relief from their stress, right? That ability to experience that, you should also see that and say, that is Buddha nature at work. And if we are skillful, we can relate to this person and say, you like this feeling? There is a more permanent way to experience this. That is not dependent on that beer. That is not dependent on that cigarette. That is not dependent on the 60-inch TV. That is not dependent on, the sexual satisfaction that you're feeling from this person that you really, really, really want to be with. That all these temporary pleasures that we experience, that you have the capacity to experience, that shows that we have a deeper nature that is naturally blissful. But because we have lost sight of that, so we chase after temporary, unreliable, unstable conditions and objects. So quoting the Uttara Tantra, again, this important text on Buddha nature, and especially in the Kagyu Mahamudra, Uttara Tantra is an important, although the word Tantra is there, it's not a Vajrayana text, it's a Sutrayana text. So it says, if there were no Buddha element, Buddha nature, there will be no aversion to suffering. Then we would become very comfortable with suffering. But the fact that we cannot tolerate suffering is actually because of Buddha nature. And there would be neither desire to pass beyond suffering, nor the effort and the aspiration to achieve the state that is beyond suffering. And so here, is the basis that, and I've often said this, Khenchen Rinpoche said, you don't need very sophisticated arguments, although, many Buddhist scholars spend very sophisticated reasoning and all that to prove that there is such a thing as Buddha nature. Khenchen Rinpoche says, how do you know we are Buddha nature? He says, the fact, the very fact that, when anger is present, you are not at ease. When jealousy is present, you are not relaxed. When resentment is present, you don't feel like, so good. That, he says, that itself is all the proof you need that your nature is not jealousy, your nature is not resentment, your nature is not anger, your nature is not craving. Because all these experiences of these types that we call afflictive emotions, they don't make you comfortable. So there's the proof. It's not your nature. So thereby samadhi and qualities increase up to the 10th bodhisattva stage. And at the end of the 10th bodhisattva stage, one completely abandons all afflictions and other defects and obtains all temporary and ultimate qualities. One attains Buddhahood endowed with all qualities. Thus, the ultimate result is the exhaustion of causes and conditions. that Dharmakaya, which is free from all proliferation and duality, is the absolute blank great happiness that is without marks and objectification, they say. Yeah, this is other people, okay? Yeah, this part here. So they quote Chandakirti. Now, 647, right? Dorje Sherab, like Chodra, points out that the system of others and that which Jiten Sumgön maintains are in some respects same. Yeah, even those that Jiten Sumgön agree with, there are some similarities. Thus, on the one hand, their views regarding the abandonment of defects and the accomplishments of qualities up to the 10th Bodhisattva stage, which is based on the blessing of the existence of Dharmakaya in all sentient beings, are the same. On the other hand, their views regarding the manner of the arising of body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities from Buddhahood on, from the stage of Buddhahood on, it's different from Jigten Sumgön. Then Sobish is explaining some problems with Tibetan language. So the expression, he says, is not very clear. So without going into that, because we don't know Tibetan grammar, I don't know Tibetan grammar enough to really, the bottom line is at the end of that. It says, but in any case, the point being made is that such a Dharmakaya is not nothing but emptiness, or the absolute blank great empty, without marks and objectification, but it is endowed with qualities and deeds. Again, a warning against a nihilistic understanding of Dharmakaya. It's the bottom line. So in this understanding, even when you see other people in a samsaric way desiring pleasure, chasing after pleasure, buying new clothes, buying new car, buying new boyfriends. And there are many ways of buying. I don't literally mean go get money and pick up in the store a new boyfriend. But there's so many ways, buying a vacation, buying a new car, buying a new clothes, buying new gadgets, Yes, on the one hand, when we look at that, whether it's other people or ourselves, we need to say and recognize, this is not going to solve the problem, We're just trying to distract ourselves. But at the same time, don't judge. Say, these people are so, Because you know what is making them do that in a way? Their innate nature. Dharmakaya. Elsewhere, Shantideva says, we are so completely under the power of confusion. Right? We're so enveloped in darkness that we have never seen, the landscape here. Except for, he says, once in a while, lightning flashes in the sky, and temporarily for a split of a second, right? Your whole landscape is illuminated by the lightning, right? You catch a glimpse, right? He says, that is like the compassion of Buddhas sometimes come through like a bolt of lightning in the dark of the night in Bodhicharvatara. And he says, then due to that blessing, suddenly we see clearly. And then it goes dark again. But he says that is the blessing of Buddhas. And here in this commentary, it says that is what we mean by blessing of the Buddhas. But these Buddhas are not out there. In fact, ultimately, it's our own innate nature. If you want to put it poetically, you can say our own innate nature is like doing its best, to kind of come out and say, hey, don't forget me. Like, which is the real you? Good? So this is statement 6. Yeah, so today I think we will stop here. Statement 7 continues in this direction. Statement 7 says, there are people who say, that aspiration bodhicitta, once you achieve Buddha, it's all gone, finish. So this is again based on the idea of like, all these qualities, right? All these things that is on the path, they are simply like the things that you use to clean. The broom, the mop, the wipes. Once you're done cleaning, they're all gone. Throw them out. You don't need them. Again, a nihilistic. Because in some ways, we also talk about this, right? Elsewhere, in other contexts, we say, oh, the Dharma, it's like the raft that you take to the other shore. Once you arrive at the other shore, you leave that behind, right? Yes, there's a reason to say that. There's a reason to teach that. There's a reason to remind us about that. But again, when we go too far, it becomes nihilistic. And if we see these qualities as just like a means to an end, and don't understand that actually at the end, these qualities, they are true, unchanging. And so right now, when we say we practice compassion, right, we are only practicing a facsimile of the real compassion that already exists. I said this would be closer to Kyoba Rinpoche's view. So the desire to awaken, he says, it doesn't disappear when you have awakened. Right? It just manifests as a different quality. Is what statement 7 is saying. So those who want to say that, everything that we practice on the path, such as restraint, such as compassion, such as loving kindness, certain Buddhist traditions, beyond the context of Tibetan Buddhism, beyond the context of Mahayana, as I said, sometimes Theravada, sometimes. The way they express it, it's like all the things that you do now, once you have become Buddha, you don't need them anymore. So, for example, love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Some interpretations say, no. Those don't exist once you have become liberated. They're just ways to get liberated. So here, when Kyoba Rinpoche says, no, those are innate to your nature, one of the things that it helps us to avoid is not to treat practices like love, compassion, joy, and equanimity as tools, as a means to an end. Once we have reached the end, we can forget about these things. He says, no. Now, of course, if you practice, finally, when you achieve, right, the result of clearing afflictive emotions, it's all the same. For no matter who, it's all the same. But your attitude towards those practices now, if it is a wrong attitude, then you cannot get to the destination. In other words, if we relate to these qualities that we're trying to cultivate now as merely tools, as merely techniques to get awakened, then we will not awake. Yes, so in a very helpful way, totally a different cultural context, a famous Zen master in Japan, Dogen. So it is said that in Dogen, he was kind of like motivated by the need to answer one question. According to the story of Dogen, it says that he had such a crisis in terms of he was schooled in Buddhism from a very young age. Both his parents died, then his uncle, who was a monk, adopted him. Then he also grew up as a monk, so the uncle trained him and everything, so he was well schooled in Buddhist philosophy, everything. But it said that at some point he could not reconcile one issue. And the issue is basically a Mahayana issue, which is, he goes something like that. He says, if sentient beings are already fundamentally Buddhist, what is the role and purpose and point of the path? Meaning all the practices. So it said that he could not find a satisfactory answer to that question, no matter how many teachers he learned from in Japan at that time. He lived in the 12th century. 12th century. Or 13th century, 1200s. About the same time as Jigten Sumgen, actually, but in Japan. A whole world away. It says that he could not get a satisfactory answer until he went to China, and again he visited different teachers. Finally, his main teacher, Ru Jing, that's the name, this Chinese Zen master, Ru Jing. Finally, when he trained with Ru Jing, and Ru Jing, instead of trying to answer his question philosophically and through debate, Ru Jing says, you meditate. I will teach you. So then he trained in meditation. And finally, it is said, Dogen resolved that question. And his resolution to the question is this. He says, practice should not be understood as a means to an end. But practice, he says, is the natural expression of what is already there. You see the difference between these two positions? Do you see the difference? Practice as a means to an end, then your relationship to practice is always going to be half-hearted. It's instrumental. But practice as the natural expression of what you already are. So he says, you do not sit, you do not meditate to become a Buddha. Rather, you meditate because you are Buddha. To sit is what Buddhas do. To be compassionate is what Buddhas do. To be loving is what Buddhas do. To be equanimous, to have equanimity is how Buddhas are. So if you understand that you are Buddha, that's what you do. That's how you express, that's how you exercise, that's how you manifest your Buddha qualities. So he says, you do not sit to become a Buddha. You sit to express the Buddha that you already are. That is very much, I say, how you should approach Idam. It's the same teaching as Idam. Again, we get lost in the technical details of Idam, Then this bigger point we lose. So when we say, I'm the idam, I'm Chenrezig, you know, you're not trying to become Chenrezig. You are expressing your Chenrezig nature. So then this way of looking at things, then Dogen elsewhere he wrote, you know, he says, now, since the state of Buddhahood is endless, right? I mean, we all agree on that, right? The state of Buddha is endless, right? And he said, and therefore, practice is, yes, what? Unmute. And therefore, practice is?
Endless.
Endless as well. Yeah, so in a brilliant way, you know, he completely solved the problem of people going, am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? I was like, stop it.
In that context, it doesn't really matter whether you're there yet, does it?
Yeah, everywhere is there.
Everywhere is
It's there. From moment to moment, it's there. Every moment you are arriving. Matter of you know or you don't know. If you don't know, you're always lost. You're always trying to get somewhere. If you know, right there is it. So elsewhere, same with the practice about Pure Land. If you don't know, then where is the Pure Land? Where is the Pure Land? Where is the Pure Land? In other words, you know, where is happiness? Where is happiness? Where is freedom from suffering? Where is freedom from suffering? If you know, right there. Why? Because the moment of suffering arose here. Freedom from suffering has to occur where? Here. Suffering did not begin, you know, 20 years ago, 2 billion years ago. Suffering began this moment. Where does it end? This moment. You short circuit all the, you know, am I there yet? Am I, you know, all of that. Chanchu semcho rinpoche ma ge pa nam ge gyurche ge pa nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du bel war shou. Yeah, so everybody, again, just a reminder that tomorrow there is this gathering ceremony for the long life mandala offering to Gajin Rinpoche. So if you can participate, that's good. If you cannot, then of course, you know, our practice is what matters. Our practice, our dedication to the longevity of our guides, our gurus, is what's important. So in one of the Vajra statements in Gongchik, it says, you know, even Buddhas and gurus need us to dedicate merit to them. You're like, what? Buddhas? I thought Buddhists don't need anything anymore. But I said, no, they do. Because when you dedicate merit to Amitabha, when you dedicate merit to Medicine Buddha, when you dedicate merit to Jigten Sumgun, and so in this case, you know, you dedicate merit to Gachen Rinpoche, to His Holiness, you know. It's not out of pride, oh, they need my merit. But rather, what it means here is like, we are adding on to, like, you know, that which already, you know, easily is benefiting others. So when we add our 2 cents to that, the effect that they can produce is much greater than our limited 2 cents. So we bank into their account, so to say. Yeah, because they have a better distribution system, to put in business terms, right? So you invest your merit in their distribution system, then they can reach more beings. So in that way, it says, we dedicate to Buddhas and Gurus. It also means we don't take for granted Buddhas and Gurus, which, we tend to do, yeah, that's his job, he's supposed to. Yeah, no, he is supposed to think, she is supposed to think, oh, this is my job. But us, the recipients, we should not, of course, this is their job, this is what they're supposed to do. And in that way, take for granted, So we pray for Rinpoche's long life, and then all, sublime guides and their long life and their ability to bring good, to increase. So this Saturday, there's an opportunity to join in that effort. But then, some of us have other commitments and all that, cannot get on Zoom. And then during that time, remember, this is going on, and add to it. So, okay, Tata.
Thank you. Ciao for now.
Gracias. Adiós.
Gracias.
Thank you.